All right, hey everyone, welcome to Tuhon And Son. This is a special episode. We're actually in Gamma Gym right now. Not talking about Gamma Gym. We're actually doing it. So don't talk, do. Yeah.
So we're not going to talk about Gamma at all?
No, we are going to talk about Gamma. We're going to talk about in Gamma. It's like Inception.
Okay. All right.
This is the third dream.
All right.
Right about now, Leonardo DiCaprio is busting a cap in some ninja mobster's butt or something. I don't know. Anyway, hey, here we are. So introduce yourself, sir. We have a special guest today.
Hello, my name is Kevin Kelsall. I'm a student of Gelinas.
But more importantly, what are you?
I'm a stuntman slash martial artist.
Oh, stuntman slash, or are you a martial arts slash stuntman?
Actually, martial artist slash stuntman.
Ah, there you go.
Yeah.
All right, so before we start this off, how did you and Dad meet each other?
I first discovered Gamma after taking a Ted Wong seminar, and it was a JKD thing, which is the Bruce Lee style. And I wasn't very happy with that, and I started to look around to see who else did this, and I found your father and myself and another friend of mine. We came here, and we sat down, and we watched one class of the JKD class, and we thought it was awesome.
You were sold. Got any comments on that, old man?
We were awesome, okay.
All right, so with that, how long before you getting into stunts did you do martial arts for?
I studied, I was trying to remember that yesterday. I think it was 96 or 97 when I first came to Gamma. It was then called the Gelinas Cultural Martial Art Academy.
That reminds me in that in Iron Man 2. In Iron Man, where he's like, it's a strategic home allegiance, and they're like, you need a new nickname. And then at the end, he's like, we're called S.H.I.E.L.D. now. And I'm like, yeah!
Well, actually, that's one of the reasons I did. I had ulterior motives. The reason we called ourselves the Cultural Martial Arts Academy is because when we founded it, we thought to ourselves, hey, maybe we could appeal and get some, if we can get maybe some stuff from the government saying that, hey, we're going to do cultural martial art things. So maybe we'll get some cultural martial art backing, some financing from them. It never worked out to be that way. And so now we're Gamma.
Yeah, well, I thought when I first came in, when I saw the cultural thing, I walked in, and to me it was kind of evident that he was a multicultural. His styles that he was teaching were many different cultures, and I thought that was actually a pretty, for the time, I thought it was a pretty ingenious name because it was all-encompassing with still being specific and pretty general at the same time. So I thought that was pretty smart.
All right, let's move on to the stunts. Yo,
yeah.
How do you become a stuntman?
Well, when I first became a stuntman, I was training here at Gamma, and it was funny enough because last couple of times back, one of your interviews, you mentioned the movie Hawk's Vengeance, and myself and my friend had watched that movie, and we're like, that was filmed in Montreal. Maybe we could be stunt guys. So in a weird way, your father indirectly
made you money.
Not just made me money. Yeah, absolutely. But inspired me to do it without me knowing that it was Philip, that he was doing the same thing, And so then training here, and your father's got such a great reputation, and he's such a great teacher. So the techniques that I was picking up, when I would go and meet other stunt guys by fluke, there was a group of guys that were training, and I went in and started training there, and I was at already a kind of level. They loved what I was already doing because I had a great source of information, your father, and I had a great background from playing football in my life, so that was something that kind of fit. And they asked, if we ever need to call you, would that interest you? And it was kind of a secret of mine inside that I had that dream that I wanted to. Nothing you say out loud because you sound like a maniac. I'm going to be a stuntman one day. You're like, who are you? You can never be a stuntman, So
I want to be a model.
Yeah, exactly. So exactly.
Get in my car, little girl.
Exactly. So that was one of those things that it just happened like that. And a couple months later, I got my first call. And once the bug bit me, man, I realized that this was something I really wanted to do.
Details, sir, details. What call did you get? What was your first stunt?
My first stunt was for a person named Mark Desordi for this show called, the name is escaping me right now. But it was a TV show, and I got to do a little action piece with some kicks. Actually, it was David Wu's cousin was the director, His name was David Wu. John Wu's cousin was the director. Threw a couple kicks. He liked what I was doing, and then he hired me again for the same show 2-3 days the next week. That was it, man. Like my first couple years in the business, I was pretty lucky. After that, I got onto this movie Timeline, which was a Paul Walker film.
Okay.
And Gerard Butler before he was famous. He was really up and coming then, because he hung out with the stunt guys a lot.
So he was cool.
Yeah, exactly. And, and the stunt business for people in Montreal and for people like me at the level of the game that I'm at, it's very cyclical. It depends on what big movies are in town and what movies aren't in town. So when there's a big movie in town and they need a lot of stunt fighters or basic stunt guys, we all get hired in the community. For the people listening at home who are just curious, it's just like, well, what movies or shows are the coolest ones where you're just like, yeah. What do you tell the ladies? You're like, I've done a couple of stunts. Yeah. I've hung out with Paul Walker. It's no big deal, man. Like, whatever. Yeah, well, it's always fun to say when you fight an actor, when you fight a famous actor, or like I fought in Paul Walker. I just last summer I was lucky enough to have a little fight with him in the bus of the movie Brick Mansion. And he actually remembered me from Timeline. He was a pretty cool guy. He was, very down-to-earth person. And so, that's something that I like to throw around sometimes, that I got to fight him. And I got to work with Hugh Jackman. And Hugh Jackman was a great experience. It was a stunt actor role. So, my first time was a principal part. Didn't do very many big stunts on that movie, but it was cool because I got to work like shoulder to shoulder with Hugh Jackman for about 3 weeks. And he's such a, down-to-earth guy. It was an amazing experience. It was a great experience. So he's really tall in person, right? He's very tall. So not like Jean-Claude, Not like Jean-Claude. I've had a chance. I was supposed to work with Jean-Claude one time on this movie where I was cast at this thing, and it was supposed to be filmed in Montreal, and something happened with that, and it ended up, it happens with movies like that they lost their funding, and they ended up moving to, I think, Budapest to film it. So I was that close to get a chance to work with Jean-Claude, and it just never happened. So. All right. Hey, Dad, you got any questions about this business?
No. No, actually, it's very funny because the one thing that I'd also managed to see, Kevin, I watch these shows on the movie channel, movie network sometimes, and there's a movie that keeps getting played with Kevin in a spacesuit. Actually, it's a spacesuit, or is it a
Space Marines? Yeah,
Space Marines. Yeah, and it's really neat because when you see all these people, because Kevin is a really nice guy, and he's a really good friend to an awful lot of these stuntmen. And so he's got his own little group of guys, and they used to come down here and train with us all the time. And it was really kind of neat because you'd see these guys in a Space Marine movie, and you'd see them on the floor next to you, kicking and punching. And it was like, hey, I know those guys.
Yeah, that was for all that was a great experience. The Recons, which is a low budget Canadian film, action film, which those you don't hear many of, and all cast by Canadian and Quebec people. There was some good potential out of that. Unfortunately, editing and budget and all these other things, it wasn't that big of a seller, and it wasn't that big of a success. But it was a really good experience. What would you say is your best experience? Well, my best experience, I think, my cherry, on top of my career up to date, was the Immortals experience. We got to work. It was, very rarely as a stunt performer do you get to work on a production from beginning, middle, and end. And we were there in the rehearsal stage. We did 2-3 months of rehearsing. Then we did about 2-3 months of filming, and we worked shoulder to shoulder with the lead, who was Henry Cavill at the time. Superman. He wasn't Superman then. He was almost going to be 007 at that time, and. So he got the Superman gig after that, but he was a really cool guy, down to earth, and he was someone that was up and coming also. Oddly enough, once the movie was finished, he really liked the Pekiti-Tirsia, the knife stuff that your father teaches me, and he ended up staying a couple weeks later after the film was done, and we trained pretty regularly in those 3-4 weeks that he was here because he loved it so much, and he was a good, cool guy. Oh man, you're rocking my world, dude. You fought Wolverine, Superman. I never thought of it like that, dude. That's funny, man. DC versus Marvel, man.
You're the pinnacle of DC versus Marvel.
Dude, that's so funny that you say that because that's the first time I've never looked at it like that ever, man.
You're the versus.
That's funny, man. Yeah.
Kevin versus. That's
I'm
your
VS.
name.
I'm VS.
Yeah, you're VS. Kevin VS. Okay, so when you say what was your best job, like what was the worst one, man?
You know, there's so many, let's call it, there's a term in the business called lunchbox letdowns, where, you know, you come in, you do a day of rehearsal, and it's this big fight with the actor or one of the leads, and, you know, it's like a 5 or 6 move technique kind of fight, and then you get back up, and you're not dead yet, and you're going to do this other fight, then you're going to be thrown into the wall, and then you're going to get a gun, and you're going to shoot. And finally, on the day, you're there and you're getting ready to film it. And whether it's because of money, time, it's a multitude of factors. You know, it basically turns into, okay, you just run in here and he's gonna shoot you and you die. You know, and unfortunately, like, I'm not the best stuntman in the world. I'm not a big actor. I'm not from Hollywood. You know, so we're kind of like sometimes camera fodder. You know, there are those times where we get to shine in the light, you know, and it's kind of a great experience. But a lot of times you're camera fodder. You know, you come in and you're filler. And those days are the days that, you know, like I said, they're lunchbox letdowns. They're something that, you know, at least, you know, what we always say is like, we hope the check doesn't bounce on this day.
You ever get hurt doing it?
I've been injured a little bit, unfortunately. Yeah, I've gotten a blown knee, where that was a blown ACL. And, you know, I was pretty depressed and I was embarrassed because it wasn't a major stunt. It was a little jump off of about like maybe 3 meters, you know, so not 9 feet, you know, something like that. And we did it a whole bunch of times, and then they moved away to mats. And sometimes because of the costume, I'm wearing these like ancient Greek sandals that are made out of like leather and no heel, no nothing. And I jumped and got caught on a neoprene little 2-inch mat, and my knee just popped, you know. And that was very painful. But the thing is, this is why I'm proud to say I'm a stuntman. I got back up and I did that jump another 4 to 5 times, man, with a blown knee. And, you know.
May I recommend a book to you if you haven't read it yet?
Yeah.
There's this book called Unmasked by Kane Hodder. He played Jason from Friday the 13th.
Yes.
He had an accident where he had severe third-degree burns all over his body and was incapacitated with really crappy medical procedures done to him by an arrogant doctor who didn't want to say in 1970, I don't know how to treat a burn victim.
Right.
So he ended up recovering 5 more months than he had to. And it's a really endearing book, and like him getting himself together again. This is before he was ever Jason. So just know.
Yeah, because he was a stuntman before, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So you can, you know, you never know, man. You might be Jason Voorhees one day.
Yeah,
just light yourself on fire.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I've done some fire burns.
Career move.
Yeah, exactly. My career is heating up.
Literally.
Yeah. So yeah, but you know that, and like I felt really bad after doing a little kind of, you know, because it wasn't like a big fancy stunt where I jumped off the building and it was a 60-foot high fall on fire. Let's say, you know, it was a little mediocre little jump that anybody with an ounce of athleticism could pull off. And after talking to some of the stunt coordinators who are the guys who are my bosses and my peers and the guys that hire me, the vets in the business, they always tell me, you know, it's always the little things that you think, it's always these little kind of rinky-dinky stunts that, you know, let's say you're overconfident about, and you know, you just...
Yeah, but I don't even think it's really an overconfidence. I think it's an industry-wide thing that says, hey, we can handle that. I can do that one blindfolded.
Right.
And unfortunately, they almost ask you to do it blindfolded.
Yeah, they do.
And so, and poof, something happens like a blown knee.
Yeah.
I mean, but one of the things that I noticed was very frustrating for me as just a martial arts practitioner was knowing that when they were casting Immortals, there was a certain reputation that was, you know, some of the guys who were running the stunts were saying, you know, some not nice things about Montreal stunt people.
Yeah.
Not the stunt people, but the fact that, because one of the things you want to be able to do is go and stretch your stuff, right?
Right.
But they were saying that, hey, you know, there aren't any good Cali people in Montreal.
Well, that was for 300.
Oh, for 300.
For 300,
yeah.
right? And like for 300 was, unfortunately, that was a bad experience for me. I didn't get a chance to work on that. There was some bit of a political kind of thing going on. And that's the thing, too, with sometimes there's so much money involved with the stunts and there's so much money involved with making movies that, you know, you could be on one side of the fence, but just by accident, just by sake of knowing this person and not knowing that person, you know, and because you're friends with him and he doesn't like him, you're not getting hired. And that's what happened with 300. I was totally blocked out on purpose, you know, like consciously, no, not you. And there was a lot of stuff going on, just like your father was saying. There was a lot of Cali guys coming in from LA, and your father knows them, who were the stunt coordinator and the fight choreographer and stuff. I believe your father even trained with them with Dan and Santo and stuff, or at least met them down in LA. And these guys just came to town and said, nope, there's nobody in this town that exists that knows that. And that was a kind of slap in the face to your father. It was a slap in the face to me. Just, you know, at the very least, I always say this, okay? I don't deserve any job, but just give me an audition. And if I come in and I suck or I'm not what you like, because sometimes what's right for one movie is totally wrong for another movie. It has nothing to do with you're not good or it doesn't fit, you know? And so at least if you give me an audition, I'm a man, I can take it, fine. I didn't make it this time. But when you don't give me an audition and you pretend I don't exist, that one's kind of hard to swallow, you know?
Well, you start realizing after a while that, you know, they're people, it's not, they have an agenda and they have, you know, they have friends. And because they have friends, it becomes kind of difficult sometimes to get your head around the idea that, hey, it's not them. It's not you. It's the situation.
Yeah. And like, that's a lot of things, you know, with the film industry, you have to have a thick skin. In the beginning, when I started off, you go to auditions and you're so psyched up and you want the job so badly, and you come in and you do, from your understanding, you didn't make any mistakes in your audition. You did everything they asked, but then you're not picked. You know, and then as you get more experience in the business, you realize, they're looking for guys that have blonde hair and ponytails. They wanted guys with blue eyes. They wanted a guy who walks like this better. And it's not anything personal. It's a superficial thing. It's an image thing.
There's also when you're unionized, like they have to meet a quota. They say this many people have to audition.
Yep.
And if you're even vaguely into the description, like I've seen people get casted where they're like, oh, she was doing it too much like a sex kitten. She's actually supposed to be like a girl next door. And it's just like, well, it's written as a sex kitten and you changed your mind that day and you just, and you know, 30 people are waiting outside who are all coming in to do sex kittens. But on the fly, they're like, oh, maybe it's different. You know?
Well, and that's the thing about it, you know, like those cattle calls or what you're talking about, where they audition, they have to because it's a union thing. And if you're on that, if your name's on the list, they got to run you through the meat grinder, you know, you got to pass through. But they may already have somebody cast, but they can't commit to it yet. So they got to go through the process, right? And then there's the whole other side of it where it's not a hidden agenda. They don't know. It's written that, but they, you know, that's why I realize that too. When you go into an audition, sometimes it's good to show them something that they weren't expecting, because you may bring something to life that is, you know what? It isn't a sex kitten. It's a girl next door thing. That fits better. Yeah. You know what I mean? Or sometimes there's a thing where, like I said, they want a certain body type. You have to have pecs and abs, which is something that's very asked a lot about the stunt guys, because you want to have your shirt off, you want to have this, you want to have that. I'm not really a pecs and abs guy. There's this one time for the movie Immortals, I dropped down, I lost weight, and I had my pecs and abs. But it's not sustainable. I don't have that body type that I could sustain that very easily. To do it, I can do it, but I have to be so disciplined. I have to, you know, turn into one of those kind of LA guys where I'm only eating this and no carbs, and I have to eat, and my whole life has to be restructured and geared towards that, where everything else kind of goes on the back burner. So that's not sustainable for me, my lifestyle, you know? I know I can do it, and sometimes it's not even needed. They may ask for it, but it's not needed because, you have pecs and abs. You get to the costume, you're wearing 40 pounds of leather. What do you need to see pecs and abs for? You know what I mean? Like,
man. So your martial arts experience, has that brought you more jobs? Like, it's great to put on the resume?
Absolutely. I truly believe myself that without training under your father, I don't think I would have made it as far as I made it at all. And I tell him that all the time, because there's a martial art that he does, is Kajikembo, and I didn't train in it very much, but I trained in it for a little bit, and it's very hard on the body and a lot of conditioning and a lot of stuff that your father asks you to do in the class is above and beyond what you'll even be asked to do on set. So if you can survive one of his Kajikembo classes, you can definitely take a couple of smacks around on set. You know what I mean? Yeah, so it definitely helped me.
Awesome. That's fantastic. Okay, so any funny stories that you tell people? It's like, you know, oh, this happened on a set one day, and they're just like, you know, their jaw drops. They're like, what the heck? You don't have to use names.
Yeah, offhand, I don't know. Okay.
You have that look in your eye. Bring it
No,
on.
because there's some stuff that I could say,
on,
but I don't want to
Versus.
say. Yeah, I don't know. There's some stuff I can say that I'm not sure that I want to say.
Change the name.
Yeah, change the name. Okay.
Change the names of
So
the
one
people.
time there was this guy. He was a stuntman, and he was hired
Let's
to
call him Ernie.
Okay, so Ernie one day shows up to set, and he's supposed to be. It was a film here in Montreal, and he's supposed to be playing a gay basher. So there was a scene where there was these two gay guys making out, and it's a bit of a harsh film. So don't take this in any kind of way, in any kind of hateful or prejudiced kind of way. This story, but so there's a group of stunt guys that are a bunch of gay bashers, and there's a group of stunt guys who are playing the gay lovers. And so Ernie shows up, and he's joking around with the other stunt guys, like most stunt guys do, like, hey, guys, so who's going to be playing the lovers today? Who's going to be playing the gay lovers? And the friends look at stunt guy Ernie and say, you should go talk to the director. And once Ernie goes and talks to the director, they tell him, okay, so you're playing the gay lover. Ernie didn't really have that much of a problem with it. He wasn't prepared, but he figured, I'm a performer. I can handle that. And Ernie shows up on set, getting ready, and it's supposed to be a bit of a makeout scene. And they're doing a thing called blocking, and which is where you place everybody in set for camera and for lighting. And the director walks up to Ernie and says, okay, well, you start on your knees, and he drops his pants. You're now giving him fellatio, right?
Giving him a birthday present.
You're giving him a birthday. Speaking to the microphone.
Hey, Bert, give me your birthday present.
Exactly. So Ernie was... Ernie's jaw dropped and was a little bit unnerved with this, because it's not something that you kind of drop on somebody like that. Usually you kind of, And anyways, long story short, they got the shots they needed. And Ernie now is called the golden knee pad, because he only went down on one knee. He didn't go down on both knees, so he kept some integrity. But so that's a bit of a funny story.
That's a very funny story. All right, Kevin. Well, before we go, I guess we should go off on something positive besides that amazing golden knees story. Well, you hurt your knee, so you probably were looking at that scene going, "Ow, man!"
Right, but you have to understand it. Kevin's also played a Smurf.
Yeah, no, I played in Smurfs. I doubled an actor, Brendan Gleeson, who's from Braveheart. He was a young guy in Braveheart who lost his hand, and he also was in Gangs in New York. He was the old Irish guy with the crazy club, who was a really cool guy. And I had to wear, that's one time here perfectly. Most of the time I have to be a stuntman with pecs and abs. Here's where they asked me to gain weight, and I had to put on a fat suit that was, made me look about 150 pounds bigger. So, it's, you never know what you're going to get. That's one of the things I like about being a stunt guy, is that your job changes. You never know what you're going to, if you're going to be playing a fireman, are you going to be playing a cop? Are you playing the bad guy? Are you doing a golden knee pad? You never know what you're going to do, which is one of the things that's great about it,
The fact that you actually know how to fight, has anyone ever told you to be like, okay, so this is how the stunt's going to happen, and you have to fight the practical part of your brain that says, why the hell would I do a jump kick before a slap or something?
99.9% of the time, yes. And like 99.9% of the time, I'm getting beat up by people that would probably never, ever, ever be able to beat me up in real life. Gene LaBelle has a good thing where he talks about that. Well, because Gene LaBelle is a very, very tough man, and he's worked for 30, 40, 50 years in the film industry, and he's had to take a lot of licks and smacks from people that would never be able to actually touch a finger on him in real life. So you have to have your ego in check, and a lot of times, fighting on camera is not the same as fighting in real life. But there are those fun times, because the evolution of filmmaking has gotten so far because of, like you guys have talked before, Bruce Lee and Jackie Chan and all these guys. The fans are smarter, and with UFC and all this stuff, everybody's smarter. So it's fun where you have a good director, a good fight choreographer, and a good stunt coordinator, and a good actor, where you're actually able to do where this would be practical. And we're going to film it to show that this would actually really work.
Well, what's funny, I've seen this. I'm not going to say who it is because I don't want any repercussions.
We'll call him Bert.
Okay, Bert. Anyway, there's a movie, and somebody who's doing this, supposedly had gone out and trained in this interesting exotic style. And, I saw the previews, and generally the previews are the best parts of the movie, and sometimes they're the only good parts of the movie. And the previews pretty well stank. So it's kind of funny when you see somebody going on to all these late night shows and doing stuff, and you're going, really? Oh.
All right, so a story that's been synonymous amongst that one time Dad mentioned it. He thought it was 300, but it actually turns out to be the movie Immortals, where one of your friends got hurt. Tell me, when we paused the recording before, you told me a story, and then I insisted on putting this in.
Yeah, okay. So the story goes, it's actually a friend of mine and also a fellow student who trains underneath your father. He was there, and he wasn't yet a stuntman, but it was one of those movies where we needed a lot of good guys, and I was lucky enough to give a couple people's names in to maybe be selected.
I'm going to interject here. Anybody who remembers the movie, there's a time when the king is whipping around a fire whip. That was the gentleman who actually did the work.
Yeah, actually, quick little sidebar. Great story, Sifu. Or Tuhon. This person, he's a whip master, and he was my whip teacher, and he had these fire whips. So we started doing these fire whips just for shits and giggles, and we were having a great time doing these fire whips, and it looked so good that I filmed it on my phone one day. We happened to be working on this movie Immortals at the time. I, next day in work, brought my phone, and I showed it to my boss, a guy named Mark Desordi, who was the stunt coordinator for this movie, and I showed it to him. His jaw dropped. He went and showed it to the producer, showed it to the director. In 2 days, they're adding this into the movie. Now it's Zeus's fire whip. And I remember our friend who showed it, once he got called from the production and said, okay, now we're going to use your thing in this movie. He was like, how much do we get paid extra? I'm like, dude, we're not at that level. We don't get paid extra for things like that. We got to just take it as bragging rights and
an extra day's work.
And a couple extra days' work. But it was an amazing thing, and he put it in a movie, and it looked wonderful. It's one of the times in actual real movies that it's real fire whip. We've talked, Ryan, about CGI and stuff. This was not CGI. This was real fire, real whip, and it looked amazing. It really looked amazing. So Andre was the guy who did this. He was now hired on the film to also do as an SSE because he wasn't up to the stunt level yet, but he was just kind of starting off.
Explain what an SSE is.
An SSE is somebody who is a special skilled extra. It is someone who, sometimes I get hired as an SSE because there's no stunt day, and I'm very happy to take the SSE because as an SSE, you kind of, a stunt performer or an SSE, you have a responsibility to be near action and to be safe. We are making a movie. It isn't a real fight. It isn't a real car crash. It isn't a real building on fire. You know, it's make-believe. So you can't get caught up in, oh my God, I'm going to be on TV and my mom's going to see me and all these kind of stuff. You have to keep your wits about you, and you have to play safe, and there's other people that you have to protect, and, you know.
And sometimes there are other people on the set who don't quite get that idea.
Well, that's the thing, and it's not to bash extras or anything like that, but sometimes extras, they don't have a lot of experience, and it may be their first show, it may be, you know, and they gravitate to camera. You know what I mean? Let's be honest, everybody who works in the film industry does want to be seen, does want to perform, they all want to do a good job, you know, and these extras sometimes are a little bit too excited, you know, and at the chance of maybe being seen. So the story goes, the wall blows, like your father said. Mickey Rourke, who's playing Hyperion, shoots this bow, hits the wall, it explodes. And it's actually, you asked me earlier, what's one of my favorite, that's one of my favorite stunts. I'm standing right in the middle of that explosion. And the concussion from the explosion was so great that it threw me forward and knocked me to the ground, knocked my helmet off, and it was a great piece, a great shot. You see it in the movie very well. I'm standing right in the middle of the door. And everybody, all my stunt friends, like, man, you really threw yourself. But I didn't throw myself. That was what they call the bomb wash. And the concussion of that just threw me forward. And that was a time where it could have been very dangerous, but thank God I knew the pyrotechnics, and I had worked for a special effects company before, and I got my pyro card and all these kind of things. So I knew the pyro guys. I knew I could trust them. It was a bunch of det cord, a bunch of air cannons, a bunch of other little black powder things. Without, you know, if I would have been in that place and not knowing the pyrotechnics, maybe I wouldn't have taken that chance. But I knew these guys, so I stood in the thing. It could have been very dangerous, wherever there was a nail or a screw or something. It could have been a kind of a Brandon Lee moment where I could have gotten punctured with something, you know, but it didn't. It worked out great. It was amazing.
Brandon Lee is the late son of the late Bruce Lee, who unfortunately died on the set of The Crow because of
It's a thing that goes in the barrel of a gun, because I have a couple of friends who are armorers, and it's called a restrictor. It's a counterclockwise screw that you screw into the barrel, and it restricts, supposed to restrict most of the gunpowder and everything else coming out, and it gives the muzzle a flash. But if that's not screwed in strong enough, the concussion, the little explosion from the blank going off isn't supposed to be strong enough to throw that screw out. But this time it did. Some people say it wasn't that. Some people actually say it was a bad bullet. There's a lot of rumors about it in the business of who's, and in all honesty, I was not there. I can only repeat the rumors. But I know I've seen restrictors go in guns, and I've seen when restrictors aren't in tight enough, they are kind of loose. And it does make the imagination think that maybe that's what happened.
Okay. So the wall blows. It blows you
blows
away.
me, sends me flying, and all my stunt friends come up to me like, man, that's amazing. And that was no stunt. That was hang on and go for the ride, which was actually pretty fun.
So what happens when everyone runs through?
All the stunt performers now, we're playing Heracleans, who are these guys who have these kind of horseshoe skull masks on. We come storming through, and it's kind of three-tiered. It's the stunt performers, SSEs, and then extras. And we're all coming through this hole that's, I don't know, about 15 feet in diameter, and there's about 200 people going through this hole. So we got 20 to 30 stunt performers, and then another 20 to 30 SSEs, and then about another 100 extras. The extras get a little bit too gung-ho, and as the stunt performers go through, the SSEs are supposed to hold their way back, and the extras, like I said, got a little bit too excited and pushed through. Andre came through the hole, stepped on some of the debris that was on the ground. It's kind of like a stampede, and they stampeded him through and twisted his ankle and hurt himself pretty bad. Like his ankle blew up and was purple in a matter of seconds. So, like I told you before, this is where the stunt performer, the onus, the responsibility is onto us to hold the security on set, because we're unionized, we have these different things, and as these stunt performers come in, we may sound like we're being a bunch of dicks to the extras. But a friend of mine, a guy named Jason Cavalier, who also helped me, was very instrumental in getting me into the business. He has also military background. He went up to the extras, and it was just like a drill sergeant thing. You guys stay here and there. And I'm not going to use the language that he was using. And these guys just, boop, and had to kind of stand to
Go
attention.
for it. I'll beep it out.
All right. Well, these guys, listen, you fucking assholes. You got no chance of ever being seen on camera. We're all wearing masks. So, there's a safety issues here. And then we all followed suit. All the other stunt performers kind of followed Jason's lead on this, and we all had to police these extras pretty hard. And like, I didn't take any great pleasure in policing them, but it was something that had to be done because it was a security issue. And a lot of times it's like that. It's little stupid things like that, And I'm not bashing any extras, but there are times where we are just all camera fodder. We're living background. We're not even, we help tell the story, but we're not the story.
In a world where a lot of stunts are being replaced by CGI, how do you feel about that, man? That's your bread and butter. Like,
yeah, but sometimes it's
fun. A big
fun.
Rubbery Spider-Man, bouncing around the walls.
But this thing, I do a lot of motion capture for video games, and I can tell you a whack of video games I've done.
We'll do that next time you're on
anyway,
the show.
but I'm just saying that the business is changing. Just like you have experience in the music industry, it changes, and you got to change and you got to adapt. And we're still relevant as stunt performers. There's no more 60-foot falls. Sometimes it's a green screen of 10 or 12 feet, and you jump, and they just they multiply that 1,000 feet if they want. You know what I mean? So it's a little bit more safer for us, but it changes. But you still got to be physical. You still got to, computer the algorithms and all the kind of equations it takes to make these guys move on in the CG world. Don't have the human element yet, so we're not out of the business yet.
I think the CGI fad of the 2000s just got so ridiculous that now when people see practical stunts again, they're actually just like, oh, yeah.
I agree.
Or at least if they make CGI look like a practical stunt, like no one's interested anymore in these like CGI gummy bear looking guys.
Well, that's the thing. I think the market gets saturated, right? It's like the first time they, Sifu can agree to this, I'm sure, but like when aerial martial arts came out with like spinning back kicks and spinning hook kicks, the first couple, Jean-Claude, that's why he was famous, right? He did a couple of spinning kicks, that's great. But as soon as everybody starts doing them, they're not, you become saturated.
Well, actually, it's funny because there's a group, I think a girl by the name of Chloe Bruce. I'm really not sure of her name, but it's probably Chloe Bruce because that's what I recall it being. And she's got this hyper flexibility. And so she'll be there training with somebody, and she literally sort of kick from backwards, almost like what you'd call a scorpion kick. And she'd sort of kick straight up and then over. And it would be, practicality, well, who knows? But spectacular, absolutely. But I mean, that's the thing. It's kind of, it's. I remember seeing my first time when I started doing capoeira back when I was way too old to start. It was amazing because there were some guys from New York there was one particular guy by the name of Cabello, and he kind of would be in his handstand, and then he'd kind of collapse. He would sort of go backwards and do this kind of wrinkly thing, almost like a plant that was kind of like just running out of water. And then he'd do all this stuff after having collapsed himself, and then he'd right himself up right away. And you'd sort of sit there and go, how on earth does somebody do that? What is the physical ability that somebody actually has to do that? And I was astounded. But it was amazing. This guy was awesome, and that's kind of stuff that you see.
I know, and sometimes those moves are, like you said, they're a showcase, one piece. Once you've seen it, you know that's what you're going to see next time you see that performer. You know,
because if somebody spends their whole life learning how to do something, how much difference can they possibly do?
Well, that's the thing. It's a bit of a one-trick pony. Does it take away on its showcaseness? No, it's still very it's entertaining. But it's if you had that same person do that same move the whole movie, it doesn't make a very good action film. You know what I mean?
But one thing, Tony Jaa doesn't come from a martial arts background as much as he comes from a stunt martial arts background, like a style that was kind of developed for a stuntman. Well, he does know some stuff, but a majority of stuff you see in On-Back Thai Warrior, it's not Muay Thai. It's a stunt based.
Yeah, but there's an art, and I can't remember the name. I remember the name that is
Muay Boran.
Muay Boran, exactly. That has a lot of these different things in it, and it's like they have weird elephant, mount the elephant this and python this and all these kind of things. This is what happens when you have an awesome athlete. You can take an awesome athlete who has all these physical attributes and give them a bit of a gymnastic thing, a little bit of a kung fu this, and a little bit of whatever, and all of a sudden you have a crazy, wicked, awesome performer who in real life could probably do these moves and pull them off in real time. So, but those are few and far between. Again, it's based on this guy. Tony Jaa's a wicked, awesome athlete. That's what it is.
He is. Fantastic athlete.
Yeah.
For anyone listening, I suggest they watch The Protector. There's about a 10-minute straight scene without any cutting where he tears apart an entire gang of people on multiple floors of a building.
Yeah, up the staircase outside the fire.
Up the staircase. Amazing.
Well, there's actually that other movie that was based on Penjat Silat. The Raid.
Oh, The Raid, yes.
The Raid. They actually came out with a second version of that. I mean, there are some amazing people who are not from Europe and not from North America who are phenomenal, and we're starting to see more and more stuff like that all the time.
Yeah, and it's like anything else. We get saturated. If we just saw MMA all the time, we start to think nothing else exists. But there's the scope of martial art techniques and the scope of martial art stuff out there is very, very wide. Very wide, and I think we're still, there's still more to be seen. So,
absolutely.
One more thing I just wanted to talk about. You were mentioning you've had your face like a life cast on your face.
Yes, twice.
And tell me about that process. Tell me and Daddy.
I guess it's better to have a life cast than a death mask, right?
That's right, exactly. Because it was a friend of mine, George Tucci, who has Fallen Angel makeup in Montreal, and it was for 2 different movies, and it's a fun experience. It takes about an hour. And it's a very zen thing because you got this hot stuff going over your eyes and you can't move. And of course, as soon as they put the stuff on your eyes and your nose, your brain starts playing tricks with you, like, scratch your nose, come on, scratch your nose. I've seen actors in Montreal, and it costs a pretty penny to do these things, like over $1,000 to do this. And these guys are, you got 15 more minutes to wait, you can't move, and the actor just has a kind of claustrophobic freak out and tears the stuff off. And now you got to call the director and say, well, I got to talk to the producer because we're going to have to do this again, so I have to bill you twice, and pretty funny when that happens.
Yikes. All right, if you could give advice to anybody getting into business now, what would it be?
I think the advice is, depending on, do it because you love it, because it's a passion. Don't do it to become famous because, it's like 2% of everybody that works in the film industry is famous. Most of the people work behind the camera. You'll have those 2 or 3 actors that are in front of the camera that everybody sees on the big screen, but there's 80 to 90 to 100 to 200 people behind the camera making that happen. And there's a lot of people like me that are kind of the unsung heroes. Well, I'm never going to be famous, but hopefully I can live my life and have a good career and some great experiences. And You know, I love performing, and if you love performing, it's something that you should look into. But know that there's peaks and valleys with this, and the trick is to stay in the game as long as you want, as long as you can, and know that it's not about being famous or being rich. It's got to really be a passion that you're trying to do. You know.
All right, passionate words from a passionate man. That was a kind of a short episode of Tuhon and Son, which I'm guessing the internet would like for a change. I don't know. Anyway, I'm Ryan Stick Gelina.
And I'm Philip Tuhon Gelina.
And you are Kevin versus
Kelsall.
And were you in a Punisher movie?
Yes, I was in Punisher.
Well, why didn't you mention that before? I guess we'll have to talk about Punisher next time.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll have him back on the show. Anyway, thanks all for listening. You can find these episodes on Spreaker, and you can also find us on YouTube, which is the easiest way to do it. And, yeah, you got anything to say there, Dad?
No, it's always a pleasure to see Kevin. It's always a pleasure.
Okay.
Thank you, Sifu. Thank you, Ryan.
All right,
He
thanks.
makes me remember what it was like to be a stuntman, though I sucked beyond belief.
No, you did it. It was a great performance you did. It really was.
I suppose that the thing is, it was very funny because I only heard afterwards that all that rehearsal time I did was supposed to have been paid for.
Well, that's the thing. And also, honestly, that was one of the better fights in that film. Besides the Gary Daniels stuff, you guys were the better fight in the film. Definitely.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right, that's a positive note. Thanks, everyone, for listening. Bye-bye.